What's up, guys? 0-1 yesterday. At least it was a loss that was so immediate and ridiculous that it was just, you don't even care about it. Not even close. 13-1. Reds loss. Nick Lodolo, worst start of his entire career, I assume. Just horrendous. But like I said, those losses are easier to take just because it's over so immediately. You know that it's over. It's like, all right, just move on. That's a loss. All right. I'm going to have one play on this Sunday baseball card. I don't love this card. Just like yesterday, I did not love it. I don't love it today. I will mention, I was looking first, I'm saying, Philadelphia on the verge of a sweep over Washington. And I believe they're playing the Atlanta Braves next, which is just a huge divisional matchup, obviously. So I'm thinking, okay, that looks not great for Philadelphia. It seems to be like that has to be a look-ahead spot, right? And they might overlook Washington, who's not a very good team. And having beaten them in the series already, 3 wins in a row already in the series, looks like a bad spot for Philadelphia. So I could see going against Philadelphia here. The line has moved down from -175 to -154. 66% of the tickets on Philly. Of course, they're going to be public. They're the better team. Up against Washington, 60% of the cash, though. So I see reverse line movement going against the public Philadelphia team. So it does look like the market is indicating against them on Washington. I still agree with it. I think it is a bad spot for Philadelphia. I think it's a look-ahead spot, a spot where they might just overlook Washington here and get complacent after beating them 3 times in a row already. Taijuan Walker looks like he is the worst of the 2 pitchers. His ERA is terrible in the 5s, a whip over 1.5. He's been awful. So this is the type of spot where you could get value going against Philly, really, because they have one of their worst pitchers pitching up against Washington's best starting pitcher, basically, in Jake Irvin, who has a 3-something ERA and 1.1-something whip. Irvin's numbers are good against Philadelphia, too, holding them to a 234 average and 639 OPS and 64 at-bats. However, Taijuan Walker actually has good numbers against Washington as well in a limited sample size of 18 at-bats. He's held them to a 111 average and 325 OPS, extremely weak offensive numbers. That's why I can't quite bring myself to do it. I'd rather have Walker have bad numbers against them. Can't quite get there with that one. I was looking at maybe playing an under in San Francisco, Oakland. It looks like there is a lot of signaling there and an under there. And I do agree with it, but the problem with that one is that the bullpens were used pretty heavily in that game yesterday between those 2 teams, especially Oakland. Oakland used a lot of their bullpen in that game yesterday, so I think I just can't really do the full game under here because if this game gets to the bullpens, especially Oakland, and Oakland is the more likely team to get to the bullpen earlier in this one, it could get a little bit out of hand, I think, and it's definitely too much of a risk. I think you could play a first 5 inning under maybe because a lot of this would be based on the starting pitching matchup here. Looks like we have 55% of the tickets on the over, but now you actually see 57% of the cash on the overs. This is all moving all over the place. I saw a lot less of the cash on the over like 2 minutes ago, so that's weird. But I was looking to maybe play the under in this, but as I said, I'm not actually going to be doing it. Blake Snell is pitching for San Francisco, and he's just been really good since he came back from injury, throwing a no-hitter, following that up with 2 more good performances, including an 11 strikeout, 2-hit performance against Atlanta where he just got no run support. And they wound up losing the game. I think he was up against Chris Sale in that one. So that was a crazy pitching duel. And he didn't allow any earned runs in that one either. Up against Oakland, only Miguel Andujar has faced Snell before, and he's 2 for 10 off him with with a double, and 3 strikeouts, no walks. So the rest of Oakland's offense has never faced Blake Snell before. So I think that's an advantage to Snell because most of Oakland's lineup has never even faced him before, which is kind of crazy. A veteran like he is, these guys have never actually faced him in an actual MLB game. So I think that gives Snell a bit of an advantage. And then JP Sears is on the other side, and he's having a decent season. Mediocre ERA in the 4s. His whip lower than 1.2 now, which isn't too bad. He's strung together a few good starts in a row, giving up 0, although it was against San Francisco, then 1, and then 3 earned runs against San Francisco, the White Sox, and Toronto. So Toronto, the best hitting team out of those 3, and that was the worst of his 3 starts there, but he did get a win in that one. He got wins in all 3 of those, actually. So he's on a nice string of wins. And up against San Francisco, he has actually held them down quite a bit, which includes that game he just had against them. They're only 4 for 26 off him. They have a 154 batting average and 484 OPS off of Sears. But one of the other issues here is that Sears did just face San Francisco, so they're going to be kind of recently familiar with him because they just saw him. And that won't be the case for Snell. Oakland has not seen Snell this year. As I said, almost their entire lineup, just one guy has ever even seen him before at all. So their entire lineup hasn't seen him at all. So I could see playing San Francisco here too, actually, because I think Snell has the advantage for that reason. And Oakland used more of their bullpen yesterday. San Francisco's got 80% of the tickets, though, and 75% of the cash. So they are public. So the market doesn't seem to really be indicating on it, even though San Francisco's up from minus 155 to minus 159. I don't quite want to do that one. I don't really want to get involved in that and lay a price like that. So the one game that I'm going to be on is going to be playing an under. And it looks like the market is indicating on this one, and that's Miami, the Mets. The first game up on the slate in under an hour at this point. Noontime, 12:05 Eastern. First game on the board. 68% of the tickets are on the over in this one, but only 52% of the cash. Even though it is a Miami offense, the public is just going to come in and play overs in a game with the Mets and where they don't think that the starting pitchers are very good or don't know who they are, and I think that is the case here. So I think that gives us a little bit of a bargain on the under. This line has moved from 8.5 juice to the over to 8.5 juice to the under. So even though the over is public, we see less of the cash coming in on the over, and it looks like some of the money is coming in, driving this one under a bit. So you can only get under 8.5 at minus 115 right now, unfortunately. And there's no way it's going in the other direction and getting to 9. I would have to imagine it's not. It could only come down from here. So between the 8.5 and 8, there isn't that much of a difference. So if you find it under 8 with a better price, I don't really hate that either. But 8.5 minus 115, I see it every book that I have right now. It's just that at every single book. So that's going to be the play. Under 8.5 minus 115. These two teams did not use that much of their relief staff yesterday. They did not use much of their bullpens yesterday. The Mets got a complete game shutout from Severino yesterday. So the rest of their bullpen is totally intact after that. So that's a good sign. And then the Marlins had Max Meyer pitching. He didn't go very far. He only went 4 innings, but they used Emmanuel Ramirez, I believe, for 2 innings to kind of keep a lot of their bullpen intact as well. And then they only used 2 of their other relievers. So Miami didn't really use that much of their bullpen either. Not that their bullpen is that good. Neither of these teams have that great of a bullpen. That worries me a little bit, but I still like this one just because they're going to have most of their bullpens available to do what they want with. And hopefully we get some starters that get some innings in this game. And that's going to be Valente Beozo from Miami. I feel like I talk about him on this show a lot because he's a young guy who's pitching well and people still don't know who he is. He's 24 years old, still doesn't even have a headshot up on ESPN. It's just the Marlins logo still. I don't even know what this guy looks like. He's been pitching pretty well so far in his I was going to say minor league career. No, his rookie season in the majors. He's got a 2.28 ERA and 0.94 WHIP. So that's pretty good across 5 starts. And he seems to be mostly improving too. He had one kind of bad start against Boston where he gave up 5 earned runs, which I mentioned on the show before too, but still had an 8-1 strikeout walk ratio in that one and went 5 innings after his 5 innings shutout debut against Kansas City. After that, he went 5 innings again, held Atlanta to 2 earned runs, and had a lower pitch count in that one. And then he ramped up his pitch count again into the 90s. So over his last 3 of his last 4 starts, he's been in the 90s in the pitch count. So that tells me Miami's letting him go, man. They don't really have much to lose on this lost season. They got this young guy who's pitching well. Let's see what he can do. His last 2 starts, he went 5 2/3, shutout ball against Cincinnati. And then against Philadelphia on the road, a really tough task, facing a really good offense on the road. He had his best performance of the year, 7 innings, 4 hits allowed, 4-1 strikeout walk ratio, and didn't allow any runs and picked up a win in that one. That's a huge win. So does that mean Beozo could be in a letdown spot here? Maybe, but he is facing another big divisional opponent here. So I think he still might get up for it. I don't think this is really an opponent that you're going to overlook, even though he pitched really, really well in that last one against Philly, so maybe he'll come down a bit from that. But still, I think he should get up for this one too. It's another big divisional game. It's just, is he going to run out of steam or something like that? But he seems to be trending in the right direction. He's allowed no runs across 12 and 2/3 in the last 2 starts, only allowing 9 hits in that span. 8-3 strikeout walk ratio isn't that great. His strikeout walk ratio is okay. On the season, it's a little bit better than that. But he's just been pitching well in general. He's got a 23-6 strikeout walk ratio on the season so far, and only 20 hits allowed in 27 and 2/3 innings pitched, 7 earned runs allowed. So all of that is pretty good. Not a high walk rate, not a high hit rate, not allowing that much of either. Decent amount of strikeouts, not a really high strikeout rate, but decent command with that walk rate being pretty low. So a pretty good strikeout walk ratio. It's all looking pretty good. He has a strikeout walk ratio of almost 4. It's pretty good. So he's looking pretty good, man. And then, of course, up against the Mets have never seen him before. So you have this young pitcher pitching well. He seems to have pretty good stuff, and he's up against an offense that has never seen him before, which I think is helping Beozo early on. And like I say, it's an advantage to these young pitchers that have some good stuff early on, because these pitchers, the opposing lineup doesn't really know what to expect. So they take a couple times. It takes a couple times through the lineup to have to figure that opposing pitcher out. So I like that side of it. And then on the other side, we got Paul Blackburn pitching for the Mets. He just came over to the Mets 3 starts ago. Had 2 good starts with them on the road, but it was at Anaheim and at Colorado. Not the best offenses, but at Colorado, still kind of a tough environment because it's the high elevation, and he still did well in that one. Then, for some reason, he had a really bad start against his former team that just traded him away, Oakland, beat him up, which usually when you're facing the team that just traded you away, you tend to get pumped up for that. But he had his worst start with the Mets, his worst start in a while. So that's interesting to see, but I'm not going to take that much away from that, really. I think he's just been pitching okay in general. On the entire season, he's got a 4.43 ERA, 1.22 whip. With the Mets, he has a 4.5 ERA. Most of it is because of that bad Oakland start. 16-6 strikeout walk ratio in 16 innings, 17 hits allowed. That's all fine. That's all mediocre. The number of walks is a little bit too high. Strikeout rate is fine. Hit rate maybe a little bit too high, but he hasn't been doing bad. Over the course of the season, just doesn't have that many strikeouts, and his walk rate is a little bit too high, so I don't love that. 54-20 strikeout walk ratio, but only 62 hits allowed in 67 innings pitched. So kind of mediocre stats across the board, really. But then where I come in and I actually kind of like this is because Miami's offense is weak, so they can't really fully take advantage of facing like a mediocre pitcher like this. I don't think it really get to him, even though Oakland did get to him. Hopefully Blackburn will be able to do okay against another weak offense like this and actually be in a bounce back spot and bounce back from that bad performance. Hopefully that's the case. Miami hasn't seen him that much. We only have 15 at bats worth, but they're only 3 for 15 off him. They do, however, have a double and a home run and a 2-3 strikeout walk ratio, so that's not good. So he's held them to a 200 batting average, so that's kind of what I like to see. Like, they have not hit him well. But because of all the walks and the home run and whatever, they have an 800 OPS off him, which is a little bit high, but it is in a small sample size. I kind of expect Blackburn to bounce back from this, so I like the under in this one. Under 8.5, Miami and New York Mets. It's going to be the only play that I have today in baseball. Hopefully we get back to it, man. After I was on that hot streak, we've had a couple of losses in a row. I don't like this. I have to get back up to at least the break-even point, man. I made a nice run, and now it's like that awesome hot streak. We're going to lose the whole thing unless I start continuing to win again. I mean, come on, man. I will mention before I get out of here, there is one pitcher who is not making his debut, but he's only made, I think, 1 start and 1 relief appearance in his career so far, which is whoever the Rockies have going today. He's a guy who used to be in the Red Sox organization. I think the Red Sox actually drafted him way back like 5 years ago or something, and I don't even see him on the board right now. Is the game off the board now? No, there it is. Bradley Blaylock for Colorado. So it's interesting. At least San Diego has Joe Musgrove pitching. 82% of the tickets are on San Diego, 83% of the cash. But San Diego is public. I don't put much stock in that cash percentage being a little bit higher. I don't like San Diego as a really heavy public road favorite here, down from minus 190 to minus 184. So we see some line movement going against them as well. That one's interesting. Musgrove, let's see. I think he just came back off the injured list or whatever, and he had kind of a shortened start. Didn't do horribly. 4 1/3 innings, not allowing any runs against Pittsburgh, but had a 1-1 strikeout walk ratio, 2 hits allowed. So not really impressive, but was just kind of getting into the groove again. But against Colorado, he actually has bad numbers. He's allowed a 345 batting average to them and 922 OPS and 58 at bats. So Musgrove actually has bad numbers against Colorado. So that isn't really something that you want to see. That's not great. And then Bradley Blaylock, like I said on the other side, he's going to be a guy that San Diego has actually seen him before because he's only made 2 appearances, both this year, 1 relief appearance for 1 inning against San Diego. So crazy. One of his 2 appearances was actually against San Diego. And then he made a start at Arizona and was okay. Had a 4-0 strikeout walk ratio in that one, 3 earned runs allowed, 6 hits allowed, and 5 2/3. But he has faced San Diego before for 3 at-bats worth. They're 0 for 3 with a walk against him. So he's held them to a 0 batting average and 250 OPS. But those 4 players have seen him before. So there is that. So it's not like they've never seen Blaylock before, despite his extremely minimal Major League Baseball experience. But the reason why I really don't want to play on Blaylock here is looking at his minor league numbers. Even though he's a guy who has a 5-pitch arsenal, he's got fastball that can get up into the upper 90s. He's got a splitter that's supposedly pretty good. He's got curve, slider, changeup. It seems like a lot of those breaking pitches kind of need some work. But his minor league stats have not been that impressive. His walk rate's been kind of a little bit high, and he's had ERAs like in the 4s, and I think he never even pitched in AAA. I think he just jumped from AA to the majors, which tells you maybe Colorado actually believes in this guy, or maybe they just don't really have other options, and they're just like, well, let's just get him up here because we're not doing anything this season anyway. I don't know, but that's one that I don't really want to get involved in. And then I was going to mention the Dodgers and St. Louis. I mean, that game kind of looks like it would be an under type of game with Clayton Kershaw against Sonny Gray. Neither team, I don't think, used that much of their bullpen yesterday. Those are 2 really good pitchers, obviously. It's basically the ace on each pitching staff, well, except for Glasnow, I guess. LA has 2 aces, basically, with Kershaw and Glasnow. So this is Kershaw against Gray. And they both have good numbers against these opposing lineups, too. So that one does look like kind of an under, but it looks like kind of too obvious an under, if that makes sense. Everybody knows these are the 2 aces on these 2 teams. The number has dropped, though, from 8.5 juice to the under down to 8 juice to the under. And I see 72% of the tickets on the over, but 84% of the cash on the over, though. So I don't know. Looks like there is some more of the cash discrepancy on the over. Seems a little bit weird to me. Even though the line looks like it's moved towards the under. My lean would be to the under in that one just because the 8 does seem like it's still a bit of a high total to have in a game where you have 2 aces like that. And maybe it's just because they have to have the line a little bit high just because LA can score. That might be the case, but whatever. And then closing the video before I get out of here, obviously I just continue to comment on this NFL preseason, which I guess this is still considered to be NFL preseason week 2. I don't even know what's what at this point. So I think each of these teams has played 1 preseason game so far. I suppose it's Saints, 49ers, and Packers, Broncos. I can just tell you, even though it looks like the 49ers have dropped from -2.5 to -1, they got 68% of the tickets, but 84% of the cash. So they look like they do have the cash discrepancy, even though we've seen line movement against them. In games like this where the line has been out over like a week and whatever, and personnel can really change where you find out more information about, oh, these guys are going to be playing in this game and not these guys. I don't put that much stock into the line movement in preseason as much as I do elsewhere. So I kind of put more stock into the cash percentages there. So that one's a little bit tough to read. And the Packers, Broncos, I think we do see legit line movement on the Broncos, but at this point, the line's gotten out of hand. It's up from 3.5 to 7 on the Broncos. So somebody must know something, or maybe the Packers just aren't going to play their starters for much at all in this game or something like that. 63% of the tickets are on the Packers because the Broncos sucked last year. So the public, they don't know what to do with preseason, man. They're going to come in and say, well, the Packers are getting points, man. What? And the Packers were that playoff team we saw make that playoff run last year. Jordan Love, man, the Broncos are horrible and they're in total rebuilding mode. Yeah, that's true. But like I said, this is preseason, man. You got to take into account who's actually playing in this game and who has more motivation really in this game. 54% of the cash on the Packers, so less of the cash than the tickets. Packers are one of the dreaded public underdogs in this one with less of the cash on them, and the line looks like it's moved very significantly on the Broncos, which I think there's been some legitimate movement there on the Broncos side, but it's up to the point where there's no way I would lay 7 with the Broncos, but I do think the Broncos seem like they've been kind of the more motivated team in the preseason so far, with Sean Payton kind of in total rebuild mode, and he's just like, I think, wanting to win these preseason games maybe more than some of these other teams do, but I don't know. So those are my thoughts on the NFL preseason. Obviously not playing any of that. My only play today is that under in baseball, Miami, New York Mets, under 8.5 and -115. Peace. Happy Sunday.